Hello, my name is Dave. I am a person in long-term recovery. Um, I'm sitting here telling my story to you guys out there that can't get to a meeting or can't have a meeting right now, and just to make you feel any better, that wherever you guys are sitting out there, whatever you're doing, and wherever you're from, I've been there and done that. My sobriety date is August 28th, 2008. Um, I have a sponsor. I sponsor others. I have a home group, as most of you probably have heard about. I work a program of recovery. Um, let's see, in the beginning, kind of grew up a normal everyday life like anybody else. I grew up in a decent family up in Connecticut. Thought, when I first came into recovery, I thought I would tell these stories to people and everything like that about how bad it was and how, everything was crappy with my childhood. Everything was bad. I got hurt and all that. When the reality is, when you work an honest program and everything, you tell the truth, and that's what I'm here to do. I grew up in a good family. My dad was a drinker. My mom was an occasional drinker. Would I say in the beginning my dad was an alcoholic? Probably not. I'm very uniquely qualified to, we're not supposed to tell people what we think they are, whether they're an addict, an alcoholic, whether in their recovery and stuff. But we're uniquely qualified to see if someone has a problem, especially if we've gone through recovery. Um, but anyway, I grew up. I played baseball. I was really good at it. Grew up, I even pitched a no hitter when I was like 12 years old, 11 years old. But I was also I was one of the kids in school that I was friends with the nerd side to it. I was friends with the sports. I played good. I played Dungeons and Dragons with the other kids and everything. So I was one of those like middleman. I didn't try to hide behind a facade. I knew what I liked. I knew what I did. And I was living a pretty good life. I know they say that your problem starts well before you pick up a drink or a drug and everything like that. But it kind of was for me. I always thought of myself as a thief. You know, um, I remember a story when I was younger with my mom. Went to the grocery store. I saw a little dog whistle in there. I think it was probably about 7 or 8. And I wanted that dog whistle, and I showed it to her, and she says, "No, what do you need that for?" Typical mom doesn't want to, doesn't want to get it for you when you're young. And instead of putting it back and saying okay or arguing with her, I said okay and walked away. When she turned her back, I put it in my pocket and brought it home. And that's the behaviors that started, even before a drink or a drug or my behaviors. I was a thief before that. And I remember I went home, and not only was I a thief, I was a liar, cheat, steal, the whole deal. I went home and I played with it, and it didn't work to the way I wanted it to, because my dog didn't even seem to like it. But my mom saw me with it, so I ran kind of around the corner and everything. I knew she was looking for me, and I kind of stepped on it, scratched it up, broke it, went inside, used some super glue, put it back together, and then when she finally caught up with me, she says, "Where's the whistle?" And I said, "Oh, this." I said, "I found this on the road. See, it's all beat up and everything like that." A good person with problems, starts really young with lying and cheating. But I don't know. Like I said, I had a really good childhood. I had two sisters. I got really good grades. I good in sports. Had good friends. And nothing was really that bad until I was about 14 years old, and my dad went running out of the house on a summer day. I think it was maybe June. We were out of school. I think I was in seventh grade, about to go into eighth, or eighth grade to go into ninth. And my dad went running out, and my grandfather came up to us about a half hour later and says, "Your dad's at the hospital with your mom." And I was like, "Well, what's wrong?" And I guess it turns out she had a brain aneurysm. So I dealt with loss early at 14 years old. I went, and not many people can come up with an excuse to say, "Oh, I know exactly when I really turned bad or turned into, with the problems that we have and everything." And that was my moment. I went from not caring about anything. I did not want to deal with anybody. I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want anybody's help. I didn't cry. I didn't see need to even care. All I did was hate God. That was my main thing. I said, "How dare you take my mom, who did everything for me, and I loved her to death, and that perfect woman was ripped out of our lives." She passed away in 2 days after that. And life changed. I became, within months, my attitude completely changed. My grades started slipping in school. I started skipping school. The next thing you know, I thought it was a really good idea to break into my neighbor's garage through the woods and steal their alcohol, their wine, and all that, and start drinking it, and amongst other things, bullets and guns and dumb stuff. I got caught. Eventually, I got caught because I went back for the third time, and they caught me in there and held me at gunpoint until the cops got me. But my first charges were at 15 years old. You know, um, I didn't. I didn't think I had a problem. I thought this was one thing. My parents and everything, my dad at the time, didn't think it was a he was mad, but he kind of slap on the wrist. You never been in trouble before. Well, let's get through this. I know you're grieving for your mom, blah blah blah. But in the back of my mind, I knew I suckered them all. I can use this. Use this mom thing as a reason to keep acting the way I did, and I did all the way through. And after multiple and multiple arrests, through all the way through 17, almost 18 years old. My dad was done with me. I couldn't deal with anymore. He ended up remarrying, and a part of this story where I said I was very uniquely qualified to see that he was an alcoholic. I couldn't see anything in my mind, in myself or any problem in myself, but I could see him. Like I said, he was a normal drinker every night and stuff, but he ran. He did pretty good with his life. But after my mom passed away, he went real hard to the bottle, and within 9 months after my mom passed away, he quit his computer programmer job and bought a bar by the house. And he would tell us that he bought the bar a mile from the house because he needed to be closer to us kids. And I think there was an underlying issue with that, where he wanted to buy the bar because he loved to drink. And I saw that, but I took advantage of that. It's always good when a 16, 17-year old uh, self-centered thief, drug addict, alcoholic, whatever you want to call it, and everything like that, has a dad with a bar who drinks so much he passes out when he gets home, because we grab the keys, go there and raid the liquor, and the friends come by, and our house turned into the party house. And my addictions and alcoholism stuff went through the roof. 17 years old, I could not live without drinking every day. um, I had to find it. I remember I was about 17, a little over 17, and my dad had remarried, and I had been skipping school and running away and doing all this. And I remember them coming up to my room while I was gone for a day, and they literally filled up 4 big green 30-gallon garbage bags full of beer bottles, liquor bottles, and everything. I got to a point I wasn't even hiding anymore. I just put them behind books on the shelf, because I had no place to do them, because I was not very smart enough to throw them away. So I remember they confronted me with that. My dad caught me drunk a couple times, caught me with drugs a couple times, and finally at 18 years old, I think that everything was perfectly fine. That this is just the way life is, and it was my 18th birthday, and I woke up to my stepmom knocking on my door. She gave me a package of new socks, some T-shirts, and some little small stuff wrapped up from my dad, and said, "Happy birthday! Now get the fuck out." And I looked at her and said, "What? Are you serious?" And I ran downstairs. My dad was on the couch crying. I was like, "Dad, you're gonna let her kick me out like that?" And not seeing all the damage I've done to my family for the past, that 3 or 4 years. So it was like, whatever. I didn't care. I moved out. I lived with a buddy of mine. I talked to my dad one more time while I was still there after that, and it's because I saw him in court over some charges of some domestic stuff that happened at the house with me and him and his stepmom and everything. So I was about 19 years old. I had been drinking every day, like literally. I didn't. For some reason, it was very easy to get a hold of alcohol where I grew up at. Drugs were there too, everywhere. I wasn't really doing anything heavy at the time except just heavy drinking. And I remember I had a fake ID that said I would think I was 19 years old. I had a fake ID that said I was a 36-year-old service member, and that I had just gotten out of the military. The picture looked nothing like me, but the liquor stores up in Connecticut would go ahead for the money, and they didn't care as long as I had that piece of plastic saying I could get away with it. So we would just buy insane amounts of alcohol, insane amounts of beer. So I don't know. I knew my life was running out of control. I was out stealing. I was breaking in the cars, breaking in the houses, everything at those ages and stuff, not caring. It's like, I couldn't hold a job. I'd hold a job for about 2, 3 weeks to a month or something like that. And I ended up finding some way to scam or steal from the job and everything until I got caught, and I got fired, knowing that they wouldn't press charges and stuff because there was no proof. So I got fired from a couple jobs, and I was 19 years old, and I was living with a buddy of mine's up there, and sleeping on his couch in the basement, completely miserable. And my grandfather got a hold of me. He lived down in Florida in Newport Richey, and he got a hold of me and said, "Hey, you're not doing anything. You're getting into trouble. Do you want to go down to Florida and start over?" I'm like, I'll think about it. And I got in an argument with the guy I was staying with. I guess, people you stay with that treat you like that they treat you like their slave all day and everything, because, you're not paying rent, kind of irritates you. So I made a decision within a couple hours and called my grandpa back and said, screw it, I'm going to move to Florida. And I got down to Florida within 2 or 3 days, and I started my life over. I was 19 years old. I didn't know anything except stealing and drinking and drugging and all that and everything. But I had hope. I was like, you know what? I want to do something different. I was tired of it. I was tired. I mean, I literally slept when this guy didn't let me in his house one night because his mom was pissed off. I slept in the snow, wrapped up in blankets and everything next to his pool, and that sucked. And I was like, I don't want this to happen. So Florida's a great idea. It doesn't snow. It's not cold. It's a little bit wet. And I moved down here with my aunt and uncle, and they gave me some rules. Go out and get a job, start over, the whole thing, and I did. I'm really good at saying, this is enough. I'm going to go ahead and try something different. And I remember first job I went and got was with my cousin in a restaurant. And I found out really quick that, even though I wasn't really thinking about drinking that much or using drugs, I was really thinking about starting over. Of course, I didn't have a problem. But I remember I went to his work, and it was in a kitchen. We were short order cook or something like that in a little burger joint. And when the shift was done, he came up to me with a big red cup, those big red Coke cups that you drink at Applebee's and stuff like that. But it was full of beer, and he's like, "Here you go. This is your shift beer." And from that moment on, I knew my calling. I'm going to work in restaurants. This is the greatest thing in the world. And I asked him, I said, "Can we get more?" He's like, "Yeah, when the owner leaves, just go ahead and fill." So from that moment on, I drank for free, and it followed that way. I ended up getting fired from that job because I got hurt when I was drunk, and the next jobs I got, everything had to do with alcohol. Working in a gas station at night and everything. When they lock the doors, I can go into the cooler and start down in tall boys. Get drugs delivered there. The whole it was life, but I was okay. I still held the job. Still paid my rent. I lived kind of dirty. What a 21, 22-year old partier would do and everything like that. I got roommates. I hung out with everybody and anybody that drank and used drugs like me. I thought it was okay. I was doing what they call like a functionable 20-year-old. Everything seemed like it was okay, but I did not know it was leading up to something bigger. I didn't get in trouble with the law for years after that. It was, I was just working and drinking and partying and doing what I did. I got a license finally. I got a car. I drove, did the whole relationship things. Went, girlfriend went to jail for attacking me. The whole list of things to do when you're partying every night. And every job that I got had to be in either most of them were 95% of them were restaurants because I knew that somehow some way that even though I used to tell people that I was the best cook where I lived and everything like that, and I could flip a burger like this, I could run a kitchen, I could be manager of this. When all the reason being, the only reason I was there was the fact that I knew I could drink for free. And I wouldn't even know where I'd be if I had a computer job, I couldn't hold that stuff because there was no alcohol being given to you. I would befriend the bartenders. I would befriend the servers. I'd sweep their rows and everything like that for 5, $10 every night because they didn't want to when it was a busy night. So I knew I can go out and get a bunch of beers and hang out all night till 1, 2, 3 in the morning and then do it all over again. My days off were waking up with a hangover as usual and drinking by 10 o'clock. I'd still handle my laundry and stuff, but I'd be half shitty all day long. You know, at about 25 years old, I got introduced to painkillers, and at first it was working in the restaurant business. Someone had a bunch of Vicodin, and we thought it was a really good idea. When I tried them, I was like, wow, I had energy. I felt euphoric. I could drink all night long after that. I didn't get hammered, and I woke up the next day and I didn't have a hangover. And I thought it was amazing. And this went on for a couple years until of course, our tolerance goes up, and started switching up to higher doses and everything. And next thing you know, it's where most of us are today. I'm snorting pills in the bathroom and everything like that. And then, of course, cocaine and crack came into it, and I was a winner. I would work my shifts the best that I can is messed up, thinking that nobody knew I was messed up, and I would, snort pills in the back room, drink the beer from the waitresses closing up, and the alcohol, and hit the hard liquor, and do everything else like that. And then eventually, I would be in the outside around the building smoking crack. It's what happened. That's just what I did. And when finally the alcohol and drug use didn't really do much for me, working wise, like I was affecting my work and everything like that. The bosses started to know better. They started confronting me. I got fired. I quit. I used the excuse of getting an inheritance because I knew I could live off of uh, I could I could live the rest of my life off of $12,000. That was a great, great smart genius thing to do, quit your job and like that. And the money was gone in 2 weeks because of the way my alcoholism and addictions was. And I remember I finally, I one day I woke up, I was about to get evicted out of my place, and the roommates had left. They got tired of me hanging around with the street people and all that, and like that was my lifestyle. I liked that, and I had no job and all that. So for some reason, my brain thought, oh wait, I can go back out and start stealing again. That was real lucrative when I was younger, and it was from the age of 25, 26 to about 27, I did just that. I found out that people leave guns in cars. I found out that money and everything. The next thing you know, I was living out of crack motels and just going out stealing every night. And then the arrest started happening again. The first arrest happened, I got right out. The second arrest happened, I took my car. I was in there for 45 days. And you think after that finally, and they let you out on probation, and you've got basically a clean slate because your charges were in another state when you were younger. And I had that chance. The first thing you do is get out and maybe think, yeah, I got a problem. I gotta address this. No, my mindset was, wow, these people in jail right now get commissary and they get all this food and this stuff and everything, and I don't get nothing. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna get out, get on this probation. I'm gonna go out and steal a whole bunch of stuff, sell a whole bunch of drugs, do a whole bunch of drugs, and then when I get busted, knowing I'm gonna get busted again, I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna have money in my commissary account, and that's how the insanity of this worked. I was I actually believed that. Like instead of thinking I can go out and get better and change my life, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go out and just make a bunch of money so I can eat ramen noodles. Stupid, insane stuff. It was hilarious. But I remember that's exactly what I did. I got out that night. Instead of going to homeless shelter or try to change my life, I went right to the corner store. I got a big bottle of Budweiser. I proceeded to drink it, and within the next couple hours, I was back at the crack motel smoking crack, and I ended up missing my probation office the next day. And I was out 11 days, and I got arrested again in a crack motel with a paraphernalia in my pocket. And I kind of knew from that moment something sucks, because I ended up getting arrested. I was facing a bunch of charges, new charges, violation of probation, the whole deal that most of you guys probably heard about before. Um, and except this time, they weren't letting me out. They weren't letting me go. I guess I was in too much trouble. And I remember I sat in there for 9 months in county jail. I had doctors telling me that I was bipolar and whatever, that they were trying to get me off the charges so I wouldn't go to prison. And I went along with it, like, why not? I don't, go get trouble. I get another slap on the wrist like it's happened to me my whole life through. So I went in front of a judge, and that judge looked at me that day when I was in sentencing about 9 months later, and she leaned over and she smiled at me and she goes, looked at her paperwork and she goes, Mr. David, why do you think that you were out for 11 days and you violated probation and you didn't even talk to your probation officer and you got a new charge? You think that I would even let you out to a drug treatment center? She's like, no. She's like, you show no ability to do anything. You're going to prison. And that was my first experience. I had to finish my sentence, almost 2 years in prison. And I went there with a resentment towards the judge, resentment towards God, resentment towards everything. I was completely irritated. I blamed everybody. This is your fault. This is it. I can't. The system. It was where I live sucks. I can't believe the cops are out to get me. The whole excuses we all use. And I remember sitting in prison, and everybody's got this story when they're in there. They talk about how they want what they want to do when they get out. Like, I'm going to see my mom, I'm going to see my girlfriend, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to do that. My mind was, I'm going to go and grab my favorite pizza. I'm going to go sit down at my favorite place to eat, and I'm going to grab a Heineken, and I'm going to drink one beer because there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to stay away from the drugs. And I did that. I got out and I did that. And within 3 days, I found someone with pills in a home that I was staying for people getting reintroduced into society. I had rules. I wasn't supposed to do drugs or drink. And immediately, within 2, 3, after drinking, I'm breaking their rules. But I don't have a problem. That was the whole thing. There was nothing wrong with drinking. But like I said, within 3 days, I was eating pills. It was right in a neighborhood where I used to get other drugs from and everything. And within a week, I was right back to my old stuff. I lost my job within a month, and I was right back to stealing again. It was the insanity, the big loophole that we go through. That's all I knew. I knew that I could hang with those people and that they wouldn't let me down. I would always be able to find alcohol and drugs. This, um, even when I was suffering for it, I would still find it. I lived in that society. Um, And I remember I did that for about 8 months, 7, 8 months. And by this time I was getting kind of tired. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I didn't want to deal with people. I didn't want to deal with drugs. I didn't want to deal with alcohol, even though I was still doing it. And I remember I went out, and sure enough, I got arrested again, as usual. That's what happens to us. And when the police officer arrested me, I remember thanking him. It was kind of like a smile and a thank you. And he thought I was a smart ass. I mean, he looked like he wanted to hit me. Like, what are you talking about, punk? You know, one of these things. 'Cause I was like 70 pounds underweight. I looked like crap. I was hanging with a bunch of hookers and drug dealers. It just dumb stuff, you know. And um, I said thank you. You know, I got arrested and I went to jail again. I was facing about 5 years in prison with the charges I had. I was ready to go back. I was done. I was like, you know, I didn't think I had a problem with alcohol. I knew I had a problem with drugs. I knew they put me where I'm at, and I was just ready to do my time and give up. And you know, and that's when the hatred towards God stopped. One of the guys in there told me, like, why don't you go ahead and ask God for help for once? I'm like, well, I was like, I don't want to do that, you know. But I did it when he wasn't there. And I remember the first time I was sitting in the county, I was sitting in my bunk and I was by myself, and I asked God for help, and I broke down crying because I was done. I couldn't do this anymore. I could not do this anymore. And I remember sitting there, and someone told me that there's meetings you can go to in jail. And I remember getting up and said, you know what? I'm not doing anything else. Let me try this. And I remember going to my first recovery meeting in county jail. And there was this, I remember this guy that was in there that was chairing the meeting. He had a history like ours. It was really cool, but he was clean and sober. And he brought his story to us. And then the main thing I remember was this older gentleman in his 70s that was in one of our pods in jail, and he came in there and he started telling his story, and he broke down crying his eyes out, saying, you know, I'm 70 something years old. I've been in and out of prisons and jails since I was 30. I can't do this. And he's just bawling. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at him, I'm like, I was like, I don't want to be that guy anymore. I was like, I don't want to be 70 years old in and out with nothing. I'm like, this ain't me, you know. And I remember back to the way I was before my mom died. I was like, that's not the way I was raised. That's not the way I grew up. I was like, okay, well, now I'm a little more open minded. What do I do? You know, where do I go from here? So I started listening. And I remember this is the guy when I was like 20, 21 years old, hanging out with my cousin and his roommate was a retired guy that his whole thing was drinking a case of beer a day and sitting with his dog watching TV. Like that, I like that. That made sense to me. I was like, ooh, I want to be that guy. But you know, I don't. At this point in jail, I don't want to be that guy anymore. I'm done. I know where this leads me. I know where I end up. I just didn't see I had a problem yet. So I prayed on it, you know, and instead of going to prison, I got a treatment center like where you guys are probably sitting in right now. I got court ordered treatment center. I went there open minded. I went there with a smile on my face after the fear left. I did what they told me to do. I got blamed and yelled at, saying, "Oh, you guys are the ones that do what you do. You're gonna do. You're gonna fail." And I got scared. I'm like, "You guys are telling me to do the right thing and do what I'm supposed to and fix myself and work on this and do all that." And I'm doing that. And then most of them are saying, "Oh yeah, you're the ones that are gonna fail." And thank God I latched on to a guy that took some outside meetings in there and everything. And he became a really good friend of mine and still a friend of mine to this day after 12 years. And he took me to outside meetings. I remember sitting in my treatment center. Remember I told you guys I thought I was just an alcoholic and not a drug addict, or I thought I was a drug addict, not alcoholic. You know, drugs are my problem, alcohol's not my problem. You know, I thought that was it. You know, and it was a God thing. It finally came to a point where I went to my first meeting out there and I heard this kid telling my story. He went through the exact same shit I went through when I was, going through all this stuff. Lived the same type of life. You know, I related to him. I was like, wow, all open minded and listening. And the guy told me, like, the only difference is that he said he had a problem. I was able to relate to that. I was like, wow. I was like, holy crap, I can go ahead. I can be like this guy right now instead of the guy sitting in jail that's crying at 77 years old with nothing. Basically, going to die a homeless guy and everything because he can't stop drinking and using drugs. And but this kid gave me hope. You know, he had 5 years clean and sober. He was getting married. He had a job. He'd been to prison before. Life was great. He had a kid on the way. You know, there was just all these things that I used to think like, whatever. Oh yeah, you families and you kids and all that. Who needs that? You know, I got my drugs and alcohol. You know, and this shit actually looked good to me. You know, I was like, wow, they were really cool just to live a normal life. Like I thought these people were crazy. You know, I was the guy sitting in the line at the gas station, living in and out of a crack motel, sitting in the line at the gas station at 8 o'clock in the morning to grab my 4 pack of beer in front of two people like that I want to be like today. Normal people working jobs, and seeing the faces that they're looking at me as I'm buying beer at 8 o'clock in the morning, probably stinking like a friggin' dumpster, and they're sitting there telling me they're looking at me funny, and I used to think that they were looking at me because they were jealous. These guys are like looking at me like, oh man, I wish I was like that guy. I can drink at 8 o'clock in the morning. I smiled and I was like, yeah, I got the greatest life in the world and everything. But I got sober and saw that those people were looking at me with pity. They're looking at me like, oh man, this this guy's got a problem. And I finally saw that. So what do I do? I know I have a problem. There's a solution, and I find I latch on to a bunch of people. I get a sponsor. I latch on to people that have my story, that are doing the right thing, that are talking to God. They're talking to other alcoholics and addicts, and whatever the case is, they're in recovery. They're doing the right thing, and they're living good lives. They've got their licenses back. There's a big one. They've got good jobs. Like I said, they got money in their pocket and don't have to worry about spending it on the last crack rock or something stupid. It's amazing. It's amazing what recovery's done for me. But the coolest thing was, in the beginning of my recovery, I go ahead and uh, I worried about how am I supposed to help people when I'm broke and I had nothing and I had no vehicle, and these guys were taking me to meetings and they were picking me up and they were showing me love and they showed me my path to God, and they were doing all these great things for me, and I didn't know how to repay them. And I started getting mad. So I go to my sponsor and I'm like, how am I supposed to help these people out, and everything. He's like, you tell your story. He's like, you're recovered right now. You're in recovery. You're doing the right thing. You found a path that most people say is this is the end of the world. They're going to die this way. He's like, you found a way out. He goes, go to the other people. Go to the treatment centers. Go to the homeless shelters. Go to these places. Go and spread the word. Spread the word. Be a disciple of recovery. Go spread the word that it's possible that an ex-con that used to rob, cheat, and steal from everyone like that, and drugs and alcohol ruled their lives, hurt people. Can actually change, dude. I've got my family back today. I've got my sisters back in my life. I'm an uncle. I'm a grandfather now. Go figure. I'm a 43-year-old grandfather. It's amazing. It's friggin' amazing what recovery's done for me. What sobriety's done for me. I work in recovery field now. I do I do construction for a living, but I work in the recovery field as a side job. Sober coaching and all that. I sponsor a bunch of guys. I pick guys up and take them to meetings. Now with this weird stuff going on, you guys will probably think about this whole virus thing going around. I can do this. I can sit in front of a computer right now as a used to be a waste of life 12 years ago, dude. And I can sit here and tell you that life is freaking awesome as long as you stick to it. I can sit in front of this computer and this screen right now and tell whoever's listening to this, whatever treatment center, whatever homeless shelter, wherever this video goes, that you can change too. It's amazing. I hate the cliche that people are going to tell you like, oh, if I can do it, you can do it, but it's fucking true. Think about it. I'm sitting here 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I was sitting in and out of prison thinking that I didn't have a problem. Now I'm sitting here telling you that all you got to do is ask for help. All you have to do is accept a little help, and all you got to do is give a little help back. That's it. It's that easy. Be a little open-minded and change the way you think. It worked for me. It's worked for a lot of guys I've worked with. I wish you guys the best. Like I said, if you're in treatment or whatever like this, jump into it. Jump into this program. Why not? What else you got to lose? That stuff we were out there that you guys were living in, that I was living in, was miserable. Today, I don't have miserable. I deal with problems on a daily basis with a smile on my face and a really good heart towards other people. So thank you for my time, and hope to see you guys around in recovery. Have a good day.